So hi guys, we're going to be talking about a unique organism that belongs to the animal kingdom. And this organism is known as the parasite. So before we get into the parasite and everything, I'm just going to introduce myself. So, so my name is Hamna and I'm a second year student at the University of Toronto and I'm studying human biology. But today we're actually going to be doing a little bit of animal biology. And we're going to be talking about the fascinating organism that is known as a parasite. So before we get into all of that, let's just do our agenda. So the lesson is going to be on parasites. We're going to have an activity time. We're going to talk about the material needed for the activity, a little bit of a quick safety check, and then we're going to get into the parasite grouping activity that I have planned. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is a parasite? A parasite is an organism or a living thing. Parasites live on or inside another organism, and they depend on this other organism that they live in or on for its survival. This organism is known as the parasite's host. So as you can see, like in this picture that I have here, this pink organism we would say is the parasite's host, whereas these little blue organisms that are, I guess, the robbers in this case are the parasites, and these robbers or parasites are stealing the host organism's nutrients, and you can see the host that's saying, "Stop stealing my nutrients." So basically, yeah, that's what a parasite is. So there are two major types of parasites that affect humans. Before we get into those two major groups, I just want to say that the picture I have up here of the worm that's like, "Are you going to get rid of me?" Parasites are really not this cute looking. So yeah. So endoparasites, that is the first major group. And endo means within or inside. So these are just parasites that live inside their host organism. So some examples of endoparasites would be like protozoan. Protozoans are tiny one-celled organisms. So these are organisms that only have one cell. And you can imagine, because like humans are multicellular organisms, protozoans are one-celled organisms. Now, another example of it would be worms. There are many different types of worms. There's roundworms, flatworms, tapeworms, and I have a image here which gives even more types of worms. We have hookworms and whipworms. So ectoparasites is the other group. Ecto means on the outside. So ectoparasites are the type of organisms that live on, like outside their host organism. So some examples of these ectoparasites are like mites, lice, ticks, mosquitoes, and flies. So basically, these are ectoparasites you probably have noticed are more like we've seen them more commonly, right? Like we know of these more commonly. We know mosquitoes, we know flies, we know mites. We may not know about all those worms that we just talked about, the protozoan, but for ectoparasites, we do know these organisms, and even they may be common in our pets, right? Like dogs and cats, they can get fleas, which are an example of an ectoparasite. And these are organisms that really you can see, right? Because they're on the outside that of their host organism. So yeah. So an example of a life cycle. So we have an example of a beef tapeworm life cycle. And as we just talked about, tapeworm would be an endoparasite, right? They're living inside the organism, is the type of worm. So the tapeworm's eggs are released, they get into the grass, right? They get released into the grass. This cow then goes and eats the grass, and this cow will upon eating this infected grass, they will also become infected. And as you can see in this picture, you can see that the eggs kind of infest into the muscle of the cow, right? And so when a human eats this uncooked cow meat, they will also become infected with this beef tapeworm. So some common diseases caused by parasites, and as you can imagine, parasites, they basically feed off and steal the nutrients from the host organism, like we talked about, right? So when they basically drain this host organism of its nutrients, they will cause some diseases in the host. So malaria, for example, is one common disease, and this is caused by a protozoan. And as we talked about, a protozoan is an endoparasite, right, within an organism. And so malaria is caused by a bite from an infected mosquito, and it causes the clumping together of red blood cells. So yeah, that it will decrease blood flow within your body, right? And that doesn't sound too good because we need a healthy blood to survive. So another the common disease, hookworm disease, and this caused by a hookworm. And as we talked about, worms are part of endoparasites. They are living inside, right? And as you can see in this picture, you have a worm zoomed in on the person's stomach, and the person here would be the host organism, and the worm is stealing this person's nutrients, causing the person to become sick. And hookworm disease you can get through if you get into contact with contaminated soil. And these hookworms are known as blood-sucking worms. They basically suck blood out of your body, and this can lead to a decreased amount of red healthy blood cells, right? And we need these healthy blood cells to survive. So, well, let's just reflect on everything we talked about. So, one question would be, what is the main difference between an endoparasite and an ectoparasite? And as we talked about, right, endo means inside. So, an endoparasite would be one that lives inside its host. And as you can see in figure B with this cat that I have here, figure B shows a parasite inside its host. So, that would be an endoparasite. And an ectoparasite, as we talked about, ecto means outside. An ectoparasite is one that lives outside its host. So if you look at figure A, you can see that there's a parasite living outside the host cat. So figure A is ectoparasite, figure B is endoparasite. Major differences: endoparasite is one that lives within an organism, like in figure B. Ectoparasite, one that lives outside its host organism, like in figure A. So time to apply everything that we learned about parasites and their groups. So we're going to do a small grouping activity. We're basically going to take images of parasites and separate them into groups of either endoparasite or ectoparasite. So a materials list. So basically you need a pair of scissors, a glue stick, or tape or sticky notes, whichever one works fine. A marker, pencil, pen, anything just to write with, to be honest, and a sheet of paper. You need the parasite images cutout sheet that I have here, but if you don't have a printer, that's just optional. If you don't have a printer, you can just draw out these images that I have on this, that I have on this slide here. So you can just draw these out. You can also, if you want to print it out, you can print out the slide, or you can print it from this link that I have here. So you can also, if you want, you can draw these onto these sticky notes as well. You can draw the images onto sticky notes, or you can draw them onto regular paper if you don't have a printer, which is totally fine. So safety rules. So there aren't really many safety rules when it comes to this activity, since it's pretty straightforward activity, but some safety rules would just be to listen to and follow instructions carefully, as is important with any activity. Do not eat or drink during the activity. This isn't as important, but we are working with glue, you wouldn't want to consume any of it. So you keep your hands on the materials away from your eyes, mouth, nose, your ears, and other people. Do not run. Make sure your shoelaces are tied. Do not throw materials at each other, especially your scissors, and use your scissors with caution. So grouping our parasites. Let's get to the activity. So you on a sheet of paper, you want to label one side as endoparasite and one side as ectoparasite. And I don't know if you guys can see it that properly. But I have both my sides labeled. You take your sheet of paper, label one side. I think this side have endo. You label one side as endoparasite at the top, and you label the other side as ectoparasite at the top. So when you then after that, after you've done that, you take your parasite image cutout sheet. If you have a printer, you could print it out. If you don't, you could draw it. And like I have drawn here on the sticky note, for example, I have an example of a round worm. So once you have this drawing or your image cutout or whatever, you can separate these cutouts into their appropriate groups. So the appropriate groups would be either endo or ecto. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see it that well. But for example, I have this round worm example, right? It's a round worm. And as we talked about, worms are endo, right? They live inside you. So I'm gonna look at my paper, and I'm gonna look at my endoparasite side and my ectoparasite side. I'm gonna be like, is a round worm an endoparasite or an ectoparasite? And since I know a round worm is endoparasite, I'm just gonna take it and I'm just gonna stick it right under my endoparasite side. And that's all you do. You can do it for any of your images. You can do it for as many as you want. You can even do all of the images that I have on the previous slide. And basically that's it for the activity. So that's actually it for the entire lesson. So thank you for engaging. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email Start Science, or you could also visit the Start Science webpage. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys had fun. Bye.